online, warm at home, or here this evening. So again, my name is Mitch Archibald. I'm the Chief Returning Officer for this year's election. I'm joined by my partner, Amir Al-Irani, who is our Deputy Returning Officer. Here today we have Ms. Claudia Chender, who is the member of the Legislative Assembly for Dartmouth South, and she will be our keynote speaker this evening. As well, we have Ms. Paula Minikin, who will be moderating for us a little later. So without further ado, before we introduce our candidates or anything else, I'm going to have Claudia Chender come up and talk to us a little bit about leadership.
Hi everyone, welcome on this very dismal, rainy night. Nice to see everybody here, and hopefully there's some people tuning in at home. I have to confess that when Mitch asked me to come and speak, I immediately said yes, and I'm not in the mode of saying yes to anything at the moment because we're very busy. Without really knowing where I was speaking or what I was speaking about. And then I said, can I just have a few more details? This was yesterday, and he said, well, thank you so much for doing the keynote. And then I said, the what? And then he said, and here are also all these things you could speak about. So I'm going to do my best. If any of you guys have questions or anything as I go along, just shout them out. I'm happy to kind of engage with you all. As Mitch said, I'm the MLA for Dartmouth South. I'm also the NDP House Leader. So there's 3 House Leaders in the legislature, and we help usher legislation through. We're also a very small caucus. There's only 4 of us. So as you may know, the opposition politicians, we all have critic areas. And so if you're in a caucus of 4, then you might have critic areas which include finance, business, status of women, education, justice, human rights, seniors, and other things, which I do. So it's great because it gives you the opportunity to know a lot. And in student government, of course, you're dealing with all kinds of different things, and you don't have the opportunity to focus on just one. So it's really tremendous to see this engagement. Before I get too far, I have to say that I'm a Dell grad. But please don't hold it against me. I did go to Borsbrook, which is right down the street. So I'm very familiar with the campus. Spent a lot of time here over the last decades. I don't want to age myself too much. But this is really an amazing place, and I've watched SMU really grow and flourish. And I think, if nothing else, I think SMU has really become known not just for its teaching and its academics, but for its humanness and its diversity. And that's a really amazing thing to see, and certainly you can see it in this room. So on the question of leadership, when people sort of say, what's your leadership style, which is what Mitch asked me, my answer is really, number one, I don't know, is the answer. I always think that's the best answer, by the way, unless you have another one that comes to mind right away. I don't know is good, because then you leave yourself open to figure it out. But what I've figured out in my 3 years in elected life is that my leadership style is to lead by doing. And so I'm in a very kind of unconventional situation. We have a caucus of 4. 3 of us are women. When I was elected, there were 7, and 5 of us were women. So then and now, we still have the highest percentage of women MLAs in an officially recognized party ever, anywhere in Canada. 3 of us have small children. And so the way that we show up in our job is necessarily really different than the way a lot of our colleagues show up. There are a lot of men in the legislature who have small children, but they show up in a really different way because they can. And so in terms of how to show up in that space as an authentic leader, which I think is important, it's about, a lot of it is about being authentic and doing what feels right, even if it feels wrong, if that makes any sense. So, we talk about things in the legislature that other people don't necessarily talk about. One of the things we've been talking a lot about, which is really relevant on university campuses, is things like period poverty. The fact that we'll pay for toilet paper and restrooms, but we won't pay for menstrual products. There aren't a lot of male legislators who would get up and talk about period poverty. That's changing, but for us, that's a real thing. professional rules of any kind need to deal with is when you show up 100%. And then you go, right? You don't waste time. And I think that that's really, really important. And on the subject of female leadership, which I was asked to talk about a little bit because I know you have a groundbreaking female president, and there are lots of different candidates, so I don't want to prejudice you against the woman on the stage here. But you know, I will say that there's a few things that I always come to mind when people ask me about being a woman in politics. And one is a stat that I heard on a podcast called the Springtime Collective, did a podcast where they interviewed a bunch of former MLAs. And Sandra Hennenbaum, who was the interviewer, discovered in her research that there are more men named John than women who have ever been elected to the Nova Scotia legislature. But that's like shocking, right? I mean, how many Johns? Well, I mean, let's not make that joke. But you know, even right now, we have 16 of 51 MLAs who are women, and that's the most we've ever had. And so we have a long way to go towards parity. We have a long way to go to find the diversity that we need in all orders of government. And you know, we get asked a lot. There's a lot of conversation. How do we get more women to run? How do we get more folks from diverse backgrounds to run? And the reality is that you have to change the system so that they can. And it's not incumbent upon those folks to kind of break through those ceilings and injure themselves often in the process psychologically. But we have to change the systems to make it possible. And so we do that in our party. We do that by having a really robust candidate search. So if we have an open seat, you know, it is necessary that we contact as many people and as diverse of an array as people as we can. And I think that's really important. And I think that systemic view can serve you really well in terms of leadership. So, you know, one example of that we've done is that we realized through some municipal leadership that women, both at the municipal level of government and the provincial level of government, don't have maternity leave. So we live in a country where, you know, certainly not everybody has parental leave, but if you have a wage job, then that is a benefit that you get from the government. However, if you, up until last year, if you sit on municipal council or in a provincial legislature, you have to ask permission from your colleagues to take a leave. So generally that would be a room full of men that you're sitting around with that you have to ask permission of. Can I take a maternity leave? That's unacceptable. And we were successful in changing that both at the municipal level through advocacy and also at the provincial level. So we're really proud of that. I want to say a few words about public life. So, you know, it's not very sexy to be a politician. Like, it just isn't. People don't really like politicians generally. And therefore, I think it's really, really important that people run and that we change the optics on that. Because, you know, for me, where I got really inspired to go, and I think this is part of the way that my kind of education related to the work I do, was when I was in law school. And I went to law school at the University of Victoria, and we had a constitutional law professor there. And one day we were sitting in a lecture hall like this, and he said, "How many of you are planning to run for public office?" And nobody raised their hands, not a single person. And he spent that entire class, and you will realize in 20, 25 years that sometimes things that happen here will stick. This is one of the things that stuck for me, is he spent the whole class literally berating us. And what he said was, you guys have such opportunity. You have the opportunity to have this education. You have the opportunity to understand how these systems work. And so many of you clearly want to make change. It was a constitutional law class. You know, we were interested in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We were interested in the royal commissions. We wanted to know how structural change was made, and yet none of us wanted to run for office. And what he said to us was, you know, if you ignore the places where power is, that doesn't mean the power's not there. It means the power is being wielded by somebody else. And so if you have even the slightest inclination, run, get engaged. And you know, you can get engaged in politics in all different ways. of any stripe, but the idea is that, you know, we have to get engaged. And so that was like a really, a big listening, a big learning for me. When people ask me how I got in politics, though, that's not usually my answer. The other piece is, there's this old adage where people say, well, you run for office because you either get asked or you get mad. That's probably not as true in student politics, although maybe a little bit. You want to change things, obviously. But, you know, I got mad. You know, I had this kind of thing burning in my brain from 20 years ago. And then for me personally, you know, I saw the film tax credit go. I had kids who were just entering the public school system, and we had our first teacher strike. And I thought, you know what, I have something to say about this. And I have the privilege to be able to contemplate saying that in a space where it can make a difference. And, you know, that's not to say, I mean, the caveat I would put on that is that to the extent that I say things in the legislature and my voice makes a difference, it's because I am echoing the work of the people on the ground who are organizing and identifying issues and creating the knowledge base that we have to go forward and advocate. I'm not, you know, inventing, designing, disseminating, and changing things altogether. No human being can do that. You know, we all stand on the shoulders of those folks on the front lines. But it's definitely something that I would say is really important. And the other thing I want to say is that people always say, like, what do you really need to be good at politics? Like, what's the best political skill? And unlike most things, that's a question for which I have a really clear answer. And in my estimation, the best and most important political skill is empathy. And it's one, you know, it's something that's taught me a huge deal since I was elected, and I've been in this position 3 years. But you know, when you are in public life, you talk to people all the time. It's part of your job. And whether or not you're good at your job entirely depends on whether you're able to listen. And if you can really listen to people, and you can really empathize, it changes your worldview. It really changes how you're able to think about things. And so, you know, all the time, for whichever of these folks is successful, you will be confronted with questions to which you don't know the answer, and to which there is more than one answer. You know, you guys will say blue, and you guys will say pink, and he's gonna have to decide, and purple's not an option. So, like, what's the answer? And I think that, for me, the gut check in those moments, after you go through all the checklists and you figure out, is how does it impact the most vulnerable? How does it impact the people who have the least voice and who are going to be the most impacted by the decision? And when you can figure out the answer to that question, unless there's a real good reason why that's not the way to go, I think it's a pretty strong gut check. So, in closing, I just want to say a huge congratulations to the candidates who put their name forward. It's, as I said, I think a really brave and difficult thing to do. You guys are gonna, you know, one of the weirdest things about being in public life is, like, people are watching you but you don't know. Like, you go to a restaurant, they'll be like, oh, here, like, I get this thing where I go to a restaurant, they're like, oh, here you go, Claudia. And it's super creepy. Because like, you don't know. And so, you know, there is, and you guys won't get exactly that, but you will. You'll get it on campus. You'll have people looking over their shoulder. So it's not an easy thing. It's actually, like, it's a hard thing. So of you guys, I ask you your patience with these folks. And whoever wins, be generous with them, be generous with your suggestions, be generous with your constructive feedback. And to all of you, I would say, stick to your values. Go forward for all the reasons that you were inspired to run, but don't forget to flex your empathy muscle. Don't forget to really listen when people speak to you and to assimilate that information so that you can make better decisions. So that's all I have to say. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claudia. That was exactly what I was thinking when I invited you up. So that was perfect. Thank you so much. So we're going to get started with the debate now. But before I do that, I think now is the right time to thank both Claudia and Paula for dedicating their time, especially on this wintry evening. So we do have some tokens of gratitude from the association we want to present to both of them. So just one moment. So I would love another round of applause for Alrighty. So like I said, for those of you who were here before, on Tuesday for our board forum, this is going to be a very similar format. For those of you who wish to tune in or watch later, SMU Journal on Facebook is going to be streaming this live. And I'm going to open the floor to Paula Minikin. As I said, she's our longtime governance advisor and our generous moderator. I've been for 14 years, I think, something like that. She's a very familiar face for those who watch the elections, and she has this down to an acute science. So without further ado, I'm going to let the floor be hers, and you're one of your future presidential candidates for the rest of the evening. So thank you very much.
Just so everybody knows what's up, I'm going to tell you how this is going to work. Before I do that, actually, I want to pick up on something Claudia said, because one of my wise business partners in another business once said to me, how you know you're listening is when you're willing to let the other person change you. And I have found sometimes when I'm dealing with eager students, you're listening to argue. You're listening to make a point. And if you're listening to let the other person change you, it does wonderful things. And I will say that I've been changed by all these years at SMU. I've learned a lot from all you kids, and I still learn. And however, I refuse to learn from Mitch earlier. We were going to do a cohort thing. What did you call that?
Oh, the live, like...
Yeah, that's agenda. And I'm not doing Kahoot, yeah, and I'm not doing TikTok. But I learned a lot, so thank you. How this is going to work is at the beginning, each of these guys gets 3.5 minutes to introduce themselves. We've done a random shuffle in the order that will be Bryn, Sophie, and then Salman. Once that's over, we have 5 predetermined questions, which I will ask them. They will each get 1.5 minutes. The order that they go in is predetermined so that everybody gets a chance to go first, get second, third, and before and after different people. And then after that, you have a choice of either being brave and standing up to the mic and asking questions, or you can write them down and get them to Mitch or into the boxes at the back, and we will ask them for you. Because it is less than perfect weather, people can also email them in. We put this up here, it's on Facebook, and anyone who wants to email in a question will also ask those. So that said, you guys, your timer starts when you start speaking. So you can come up here and talk, you can grab that mic and stand out there, whatever you want, get comfortable, and once your mouth moves, then I'll start the timer. And for the last 10 seconds, I'll put my hands up to count them down, so you have to look my way. Other than that, when I say stop, it's stop. Okay? All right, have fun, good luck.
Perfect. So hello everyone, my name is Brenda Chaselain. I'm a third-year political science and economics student here at St. Mary's, and I'm running to be the next SMUSA president for 2020 and 2021. You know, really I want to share with you right now kind of why I decided to run for this position and some of the things that really interest me about SMUSA and about our campus here. You know, I grew up in Ontario playing volleyball. I was a big sports guy, and I actually came to Halifax to look at universities, and I originally just came to have a tour at Dow and had a free afternoon and decided that I would stop in at St. Mary's to see what it had to offer. And really what I found that afternoon was an energy that I really haven't been able to replicate anywhere else. And I think that from my first moment on campus, I wanted to be a part of that energy here at SMU, both in contributing to it and trying to give back to the student body. So in my first year, I was really interested in SMUSA, really thought it would be a cool thing to get involved in. But it was kind of hard to get through the door being a first year living in residence at the time. And so I kind of waited a year, got involved as a path leader, was fortunate enough to make a few connections. And this year I've been proud to serve as the VP Academic and Advocacy for SMUSA on this year's leadership team. With that said, really why I wanted to run was to have an opportunity to give back to the student body and build on the incredible student leaders that we have here on our campus. I wanted to campaign because I wanted to have an opportunity to really engage with students, hear about the ideas that students care about most, and then potentially turn that into actual action here on our campus. I wanted to run a campaign that would focus on making student life more affordable here for students at St. Mary's. I wanted to advocate for students where maybe their university experience hadn't been as great as they wanted it to be just yet. And I wanted to focus on making SMUSA a little bit more inclusive and open up the doors so that more students can come and participate in the great student association that we have. Tonight I'm really hoping to give you a sense of some of the ideas that I have, but I'm also really excited to hear the things that you have to say. I've put out a platform on my social media, and I've been talking to students over the last few days, but I've really been open to hearing feedback and suggestions and making those small changes to my platform in order to make sure that the ideas that I'm putting forward are really representative of our campus. I want to fight for students. I want to make sure that students feel like they're accepted here at St. Mary's, and that's really something that I want to continue to do next year. I've worked in admissions for 2 years at St. Mary's and really got a sense of what students were facing when they're coming to campus, making the decision on where they want to pursue a university degree. And I've also had an opportunity this year to kind of see the other side of it, when things start to go wrong for students and the support that they need. So I think based on some of the experience that I have and my willingness to be open, I would be honored to be able to be the president of SMUSA next year and start to give back to the campus that I love so much. I'm really excited to hear all of your questions tonight, and I'm also really excited to have a healthy discussion and debate with the other candidates. It definitely takes a lot to be able to put yourself through this process, and I think it's wonderful that we have 2 other strong candidates here tonight as well to debate ideas and really have an opportunity to talk about some of the problems that we see right now at St. Mary's and some of the potential and where we can go in the future. So once again, my name is Brenda Shasley. I'm running for SMUSA president. Really looking forward to the rest of the night. Thank you.
My name is Sophia Okorafo, and I'm an international student from Nigeria. Over time, I've had the opportunity to meet some of you. We've talked, we've laughed, we've cried, and we bonded about how stressful school is. So I am running to be your representative. I am running for the students who've had good and bad times here at SMU. I am running to be your voice, I am running to your bridge, and I am running to let you know that I will always be there for you. Once again, everyone, my name is Sophia Okorafo, and I am running to be your bridge. Thank you.
Now, most of you are wondering, what is this gesture? This is part of my culture, something I'm always proud of. I'm proud of my family members, I'm proud of all my friends and all the students I've interacted with in my university life. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to you all one more time, and I would like to congratulate the candidates. My name is Salman Islam Salim, and I am a 4th year accounting student. And I want to tell you something about involvement. I have been very involved on campus, and I believe in legacy of involvement. Currently, I am working with the Consent Project, the sexual violence prevention team, in the alumni office as a student caller, and also an airport greeter with the International Center. When I first came here, I was like a seed ready to be nurtured. Then I learned a lot as I got involved on campus, and it's really a learning process. I'm not going to say a lot about my campaign ideas right now. You will hear throughout the rest of the debate. But if I have to tell you something about me, I believe in leadership, and I believe that I have passion. I am filled with passion. This is my second time running for SMUSA president, and I am pumped. I am ready to serve you as your student association president. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so now we move to, you guys are all going to share that mic? That makes sense.
There's a wireless one.
That's what I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Should I be handing this out?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be probably better.
I'll leave that to you. So while he's doing that, I'm going to tell everyone what the first question is, which is, what is the first issue upon which you would take action if elected? And the order for answering this question is first Sophia, then Bryn, and then Salman. And you each have a minute and a half. I would stay seated for all the questions, because if we do this, this will go for 4 hours. We don't want to. Just a suggestion. Okay, you can stand at the end when you do your summary.
Hi, thank you for that question. So one of the things I would like to work on if I am elected the SMUSA president is the communication between SMUSA and the students. Throughout the process of campaigning so far, I have had the opportunity to talk to a lot of students. Some of them have an idea about what SMUSA is and others do not. So creating more awareness about the services we have, what we do, what SMUSA does is one of the things I would like to work on if I am elected as the president. I want people to know about our services. I want people to know that this is there for them. I want to focus on marketing and just getting more students involved, building the school spirit, and just, engaging everyone in what SMUSA is and what we can do for them. Thank you.
It's a great question, and I think the issue that I would really want to tackle first is one that I've gotten a lot of questions about, which is what I put on my posters as free textbooks. And just to talk a little bit about what that looks like, it's actually a system that already exists here in Canada. So the technical term is called Open Educational Resources, and basically what that is are textbooks that are placed online that are free and accessible to students. You don't have to pay a cent for them. And this is actually a project that I've been working on all year alongside colleagues from the student unions at St. FX and Acadia, and we're this close to getting it here in Nova Scotia. So I think by putting a little bit more time into this, making more students aware that this is a possibility, it's definitely something that I think that we can achieve together next year. It's something that a lot of students care about. On average, students here pay between $500 and $1,500 on textbooks per year. So when we talk about making an affordable campus, that's really what I'd like to focus on first, by pursuing open educational resources and making that a reality here at SMU. Thank you.
So the first issue I would want to work upon is student wellness. I believe that if the student's academic performance is dependent on their physical and mental health condition. Let's talk about climate change, one of the global issues right now. So we want to educate our students with the resources on campus, and be it as small as giving hand sanitizers as part of the Welcome With Kit. Also, let's focus on social media. I have actually been inspired by career services. If we do a lot of social media work, let's just say for now, the problem has been, how many of you spend more than 2 hours in social media? Raise your hands. More than 4 hours. All right, a lot. So I believe part of mental health issues, they channel from social media. And to tackle these issues, if we work on our social media, I think we can be much more effective with our leadership. We want to care about our students, and we want to listen about the mental health issues on campus. I think mental health should be a priority. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so question 2, the order will be Sophia, Salman, and then Bryn. And the question is, what is your current level of involvement on campus, and how do you think this experience can benefit you in office?
Hey, thank you for that question. I currently work at the library and the Women's Center. Over time, I have been involved as a pack leader. I have been a volunteer for the Women's Center. I have been a part of Speak Up. I have been a part of Peaceful Schools Initiative and various other activities in school. This involvement has given me a chance to talk to people in passing or just getting to know them. I believe that with my involvement in school, I am able to understand people. I can talk to people effectively, talk to them about their issues, talk to them about what's going on, and just really have like deep and meaningful conversations with students, which is important because as a leader, you need to be able to communicate with people. So my involvement in school has helped me build myself as a leader. It's helped me learn how to speak. It's helped me know how to manage myself effectively. And I'm grateful for each and every one of this opportunity and how it has helped me build myself. Thank you.
As I have mentioned, I have been involved in 4 different departments on campus. First of all, let's start with the Consent Project, where we are promoting the consent culture, where we have consent panel discussions. I am also part of the alumni office where we work as a student caller. We call the alumni and we ask them how they're doing. We ask them for donation as well, but we also update their information. Well, with International Center, greeting the students on airport, when they first come to St. Mary's, we want to make sure that their experience are great, and we can only do so much, and we can try our best to make sure that they are having a great experience. I'm also working with Sexual Violence Prevention Initiative team, and I believe that if men like me, if we stand up for sexual violence prevention, I think we can inspire many other men. It's not just about the involvement, it's also about student community, staying invested in conversations, staying genuinely invested, listening. If just asking someone how you're doing, how's your day going, you have no idea. Words are powerful, I believe. And about experience, I believe we all have great experience. And any experience is great experience. Thank you.
So in terms of current experience, I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I've done. I'm a student first and foremost. I've been struggling through trying to complete my honors in political science and write a thesis over the last few months. I'm also a member of the Model UN Society, which I've been in for a few years, and I'm a frequent at volleyball intramurals on Wednesday nights. And to kind of echo what Sophia and Salman said, I think any experience any of us as students have on campus is valuable because we're interacting with each other, we're talking about some of the issues that we're facing on campus, and starting to understand some perspectives that are different to our own. So in terms of how that would help me next year, I think in the last few months I've been talking and working with a lot of students who, their university experience so far maybe hasn't gone their way. They've had some issues with professors, potentially they've been suspended or from the university and are looking for support. And so I think really what that's done is kind of opened my eyes to some of the realities here at St. Mary's. I come from a place of privilege, and it's been really important for me, I think, to be able to recognize that everyone has a different experience here on campus, and really in order to respect that, I think we need a team of people that are ready to fight for students, fight for their issues, and make sure that people feel heard by the representatives that they elect. Thank you.
Okay, before we get to question 3, I just want a quick word of candidates. Okay, before I get to question 3, I have to remind you, because I don't think we mentioned it, did we mention? There are fabulous prizes for people who stay till the very end. And you don't get them unless you're here. So if you want the fabulous prize, I saw a couple of people leave, and the first thing I thought is, oh man, do they know they're missing out? So I just figured I'd mention the fabulous prizes. Okay, so question 3 will be answered first by Bryn, then by Salman, and then by Sophia. And the question is, equity, diversity, and inclusion surfaced as big themes at the board candidate forum on Tuesday. What does equity, diversion, and inclusion mean to you, and what action would you take to improve this on campus?
It's an excellent question. I was here at the board forum and was really happy to see that it was something that was brought up and talked about by all candidates. I think what's important here is that equity and diversity and inclusion, they need to be values for SMUSA. They need to run through the entire organization. And I think, issues relating to equity, diversity, and inclusion, they can't just be handled by a VP of Equity and Wellness. It should be something that everyone on SMUSA's team is actually looking to work towards, and they should be incorporated into every aspect of day-to-day work. So I think in terms of things that SMUSA can do in order to address that, I think we have to really be uncomfortable at SMUSA, be willing to be putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations, and be ready to make changes to our system, and specifically, looking at our structure to ensure that people that maybe don't feel represented by SMUSA can have an opportunity to be involved in their capacity. When we look at something like inclusion, I think it's fair that a lot of Indigenous students on campus don't feel like this election process is accessible to them, that it's a very colonial environment for them to be coming and participating in. So I think we really need, as SMUSA, to meet people halfway and be ensuring that we're willing to make changes to our own structure in order to better the representation that we can have on campus.
Well, with equity and diversity, I will honestly tell you that we do have a culture like students recruiting students, and which I think is great, like students have the voice, but sometimes there can be unconscious biases, and friends can be hired. So we want to do something in terms of transparency, in terms of fairness. And I have, as a person who volunteered with LGBTQ Society as an executive and volunteered with Women's Center, I understand the equity and diversity, and I think equity shall be the focus rather than equality. I believe that diversity is the new strength. So, my dear friends, let's embrace diversity. Thank you.
So about equity, diversity, and inclusion. Being an international student myself and coming here, I understand what it is to be in a diverse environment. Diversity is about culture, it's about different people's background, it's about everyone coming together to form one happy circle. Equity is the art of being fair. In a diverse environment, you have to be fair. You have to be fair and understanding of people's culture, where they come from, and you also have to be inclusive. These three go hand in hand. They can't be set aside, they can't be put apart, because that's what creates an environment that is welcoming for everyone. And it means a lot to me, especially as I have friends from various backgrounds, various ethnicity, and just having to share their culture is amazing. And it's something that is very important to have on campus. And promoting people's culture is something that I really want to put here. Making sure everyone feels welcome and included is something that I would want to put as part of my goals and aims. Thank you.
All right. Question 4, the order is Sophia, Salman, and then Bryn. And question 4 is, what is your plan if you aren't elected as president? How would you continue your involvement?
Hi again. Well, as you all know, I work at the library and the Women's Center, and these two places has helped me grow a lot as a person. Some of you might know me when I come at 10:30 p.m. and I'm like, hey guys, the library's closing soon, you gotta go. Or like the Women's Center when you come to relax, when you come to rest. But these two things are one of the things that has built me up as a person. The library has made me talk to so many people that I enjoy talking to. I've met so many friends from there. The Women's Center has taught me how to advocate, how to think outside the box, and I would love to continue these two things if I am not elected as a president. Thank you.
Well, if I don't get elected as a president, I will compare it with my last year. The last year, during the results day, I was in Northern Ireland representing St. Mary's. I was upset, of course. I was crying, not like a little baby, but but sometimes we don't need to have tears in our eyes to cry. We can just cry. And the day was a little rough, but I was still happy for Mary, and I believe that she was gonna be a great president. And I congratulated her. I congratulated all the board of directors because it takes a lot of courage to run. Now, this year, however, I don't think so. I will cry. I think I'll be happy. That's because I believe that I was given a fair opportunity. I put my posters on time. I didn't have to wait for 3 days. I put up a great campaign, and I'm still here with confidence, with full confidence. So I will be happy this time, and I believe life is full of opportunities. I think this doesn't stop here. If we don't make it very far, I think there will be more opportunities that will, come on our way. And I think that I will follow St. Mary's mandate. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
I think one of the reasons that I really wanted to run was because I want to work with students. I want to learn from student leaders that are here on campus. And we have a really incredible group of student leaders that are doing some incredible things at St. Mary's. And so, if I don't win this election, I'm still going to work for students, and I'm still going to fight for students. There are key issues that really made me want to run for SMUSA president. I think we have a sexual violence policy that needs to be updated. It needs more work. I think we need a code of conduct that includes all members of the university community, not just students. And I think we need to work on overall engagement on campus. And those are all issues that I'd like to continue to work towards, regardless of whether I'm elected or not. And in my time here at SMUSA, I've been fortunate enough to work in the admissions department. I've been fortunate enough to work with SMUSA. But really my goal for next year would be to work with students who really care about this campus and want to make a difference here in Halifax. And I know that's going to be easy because we have a lot of them, including all of you in the audience tonight. So really, if I don't win this election, I want to keep working for students, and I want to fight to make sure that students feel welcome here on campus. Thank you.
So this is the last of the preset questions, and then we're going to you guys. The order for this question is first Salman, then Bryn, and last is Sophia. And the question is, what do you believe is the greatest challenge SMUSA faces?
Thank you for the question, Paula. I believe that SMUSA has been doing a great job, and I want to continue that work. I won't be able to talk about my platform in just a couple minutes, but I can tell you that I'm running a project which is called Student Voice Project, where we do not just focus on our platform, but we give the voice to students, what they want to see happening on campus, because SMUSA's mandate is very clear, like it's students working for students. If we want to work for students, we need to know about their issues, and we need to actively work on the student issues. Well, a couple issues where, like the Husky Patrol, I think Husky Patrol is great. I think it's a privilege. My friend came down from Toronto and he was telling me, we don't have something like that. I think like in terms of like small initiatives, like covering more areas, some students actually lose their bus pass and they have to pay $15 or more. I think in terms of that, we can reduce the cost because things can be very expensive. With $15, they can afford 2 meals. And I also want to work on seed, save, sorting, so that when you leave something somewhere or someone finds it, they can call the security right away and they will be able to sort it. In this way, we wouldn't have to lose our iPhone chargers or our phones in general. Well, trust me, we can do so much to create an impact in this community, and let us all come together and add volume to the voice. Thank you.
I think the biggest problem facing SMUSA is, to be quite honest, a lack of engagement. And I think we see that right here in the election period, that, the student unions at St. FX and Acadia, they each have more voters in their elections this year, even though they have universities with a population a lot smaller than ours. And so I really think what that means is that, we need to find a way to make SMUSA a little bit more accessible. I think there needs to be more outreach to students to make sure that they really feel like SMUSA can be something for them. And I think what that starts with is focusing less on selling students about what SMUSA currently is, and more selling them on what SMUSA can be. And I think that's really important to make sure that we're having students coming together, sharing ideas, and starting new initiatives. We have a lot of power in our students here on campus, and I think we need to ensure that by opening up SMUSA's doors, actively seeking to get new voices to join the conversation, we can really make a difference in terms of having more people within SMUSA and involved in the association. So I think right now, we do have a bit of a lack of engagement, but there's a real opportunity here to build on that. I think, currently our leadership team is responsible for sitting on a number of committees around the university. We could easily have more students at large sitting on those committees, sharing their ideas in some of the larger university bodies. I think it starts with SMUSA being willing to, again, put themselves in situations that might be a little bit uncomfortable, be willing to change their structure, and be open to more students being a part of the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, Mitch, do we have any questions that have been submitted?
Yes, I guess.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that. My fault. Go ahead, Sophia. I would have got the one up there.
Yeah, I believe SMUSA has done a great job, but we have to improve on getting, like Brent said, we have to improve on getting students engaged, getting the school spirit up, getting them to participate in things, and being more open is one of the things we have to work on. There are 6,000 students here, and we need to be their school spirit. We need to get them pumped about SMUSA. We need to get them engaged in all the activities we have, from sports to society events to outside volunteering. We just need to get students involved, which is very important. Thank you.
Sorry, Sophia. Okay, do we have a question?
Yeah, we have a couple of them. So I think what we'll do this evening is then, because I only really have 4, unless someone feels like submitting more via email at elections.smusa@smu.ca, then I can just go with this and we'll set the mic, and
Yes.
very similar to earlier this week. So the first one we have here is, what impact can SMUSA have on the price of tuition for students? It was also one mentioned during the board debate, but just more generally, what impact can SMUSA have on the price of tuition for students?
Okay, and so first is Sophia, then Salman, then Brent.
Can you repeat the question?
I will. So what impact can SMUSA have on tuition fees for students? Is that the short version?
Yeah.
Good, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so SMUSA sits on various boards, the board of the governance, the senate, and stuff like that. Through those opportunities, or through those areas, we can advocate for like a cap or a predictable fee for students. Currently, I don't think there's anything we can do about our set fee. We can't promise you, in my opinion, I don't think we can promise a reduction, but we can promise for a steady fee or predictable fee by advocating for each and every one of you. And that's it. Thank you.
I think, as Sophia mentioned, that we cannot do, but we can advocate for the issues. Like if there's issues around that, we will definitely advocate for these issues to CASA, to student NS, and if we work together, I think we can make a lot of things possible. But I will not today I will not make any promises that your tuition fee will be reduced or it will be steady, because experience-wise, I can tell you every year it's increasing. Thank you.
It's a great question. I mean, tuition is one of the most expensive things that students have to deal with while they're at university. And I'll echo what Sophia and Salman said. We definitely can't make any promises about ensuring that tuition is going to stay at the same point or even go down. I think where we can really have an impact is by advocating to the university on making tuition predictable. And what I mean by that is, for domestic students here at St. Mary's, you know that for the next 5 years, the government has mandated that your tuition can only go up 3% per year. But for international students, there's nothing stopping the university from jacking up your tuition 2 or 3 times if they want to. So really, I think the focus for us here, it's not necessarily about ensuring that tuition goes down, but it's about making sure that all students can budget for what they know their degree is going to cost by making tuition predictable. And so that's something that we can continue to work on with university bodies like the Budget Committee. The university does have to come and talk to students and consult with us in that process. So I think it's really important that we focus on making tuition predictable for all students, so you don't have to stress about making sure that you can actually pay for your entire degree, and you can focus more on what matters, first, which is being healthy, enjoying your life, and being able to succeed while you're at SMU. Thanks.
Next question, Mitch?
So what would you do to impact sustainability on campus?
So the question is, what would you do to impact sustainability on campus? And the order of this is Salman, Bryn, and Sophia.
Thank you for the question. As I've mentioned, that climate change is one of the global issues right now, and we want to make sure that we take precautionary measures, just like giving hand sanitizers to students and teaching them about the resources and educating them what we can do in this crucial time when infections are prevalent. So, and for sustainability, we want to continue. We want to make sure that we are not damaging the resources, and we are leaving the resources for the next generations. And with SMUSA, they are already having Sustainability Week. And when I get to be elected as your Student Association President, I will make sure that this work is being continued, because I think it's a great work. Thank you.
This is a great question as well, and I think one of the biggest things that we can look at specifically is with the current food contract. So Aramark's in its last year of its contract right now, so there is the potential to have a new provider next year. Aramark might be back under a new contract. So I think there's really some opportunities for us to raise awareness about sustainability issues in regards to food options on campus and some of the services that Aramark provides. I think we have an opportunity to raise awareness about that, but also really come together as students and demand action. One of the things that I've heard talking to students the last few days, which I thought was a great idea, is the fact that some of our automatic flush toilets here on campus waste a lot of water. And that could be something that we could raise to the university, make them aware of it, and demand change on those key issues. I think what's really important, with things like the SMUSA Sustainability Week, with some of the great panels that have been going on in the last few months, it's ensuring that we're continuing that conversation, we're bringing students together, and if we can show the university that this is something that we really care about, then it's more likely that they're going to have to respect that decision. So I think it really comes down to creating awareness, coming together as students, and then demanding the action. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Sophia. My fault. I apologize. I don't know why I skipped you again. It's right there.
Hi everyone. So I came from a place where sustainability wasn't really a thing. Recycling or putting your garbages in the right place wasn't really something that was done by the people back home. So one of the things I like to work on, Sustainability Week, is good. Having that here educates people, it promotes the goals we're trying to achieve. But sustainability classes for people who come in so that they understand how to recycle, reuse, and reduce. Update to the garbage bins. Because sometimes I look at it and I'm just like, oh, where does this go? Maybe more written words along with the picture to give us better description of how to reuse, recycle, and reduce. And also, like I said, the classes, the week, advocating for it, and just educating people in general is something that will help promote sustainability. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Next one.
If elected, do you plan to do anything for students living on campus?
Okay, so the question is, if elected, do you plan to do anything for students living on campus? And the order of this question is is Sophia, Bryn, Salman.
Okay, thank you. We are running to represent everyone, both those on campus and off campus. We are running to represent you in your needs. We are running to listen to you. We are running to be open. So yes, I plan on helping those on campus. I plan on listening to your complaint and working on whatever situation or whatever difficulties you can face. So yes. If elected, I will help those on campus and off campus. Thank you.
Our residence population is a really important part of Spirit at St. Mary's, and they're often a community that, from SMUSA's perspective, gets left a little bit behind. And I think this really comes back to a pillar of my campaign, which is all about expanding SMUSA's participation. And I think one of the problems that we have, especially with a topic like residence, is that we expect, the connection with RAs, the work that's happening on residence, to be something that they're going to be willing to do without any kind of compensation. I'd like to add a number of paid positions within SMUSA to ensure that we are adequately, receiving information from across campus. And I'd like to have RAs and students on residence around that table contributing their ideas. The other part of this that goes beyond participation comes back to our discussion about tuition and affordability as well. There's nothing stopping the university right now from jacking up residence costs and jacking up the costs of meal plans as well. And that's something, again, that really isn't fair for our students. So looking into caps, looking into predictability so that students know that they're not going to get halfway through their degree and suddenly are going to need to be paying far more than when they first walked on our campus. So again, I really think it comes back to kind of putting our money where our mouth is. If we want people to be coming and contributing opinions, we need to be prepared to compensate them for that work. It can't all be based on volunteer work. The president and the VPs that are hired and appointed and elected to their roles, they're paid full-time jobs to do their work and advocate for students. So if we're expecting students from other parts of the university to come and be a part of that, we need to make sure that they're getting compensated for their time. Thanks.
The question was if we will do something for the students who are living on campus. I think it is important to increase the communication with SMUSA and the on-campus students, just the way I am running my Student Voice project, where we are collecting the feedbacks from students. I think we will continue that work because at the end of the day, your issues, if you let us know about the issues on campus, only then we can advocate for these issues and we can reach out to this residence committee and resolve the issues. I think another way would be, with dockside food options, we can definitely increase the food options and have some events on dockside that showcases multicultural diversity, where you get to, maybe not every day, maybe not every week, but at least bi-weekly or once in a month. We can definitely do something around that for sure. So yes, I believe that, once I get elected as your student association president, I will definitely stick to my promises and continue doing the work. Thank you.
Alrighty. So, I typically reword them, but this one I actually kind of liked, and I want to leave it in its regular form. So it's quite blunt. It's what's the plan with SMU healthcare? International students do not have backup insurance, and yet it takes 2 weeks to see a SMU doctor. Help.
That's the theme of SMU's healthcare plan. International students do not have backup health insurance, and it takes 2 weeks to see a SMU doctor. So the order for this question is first Bryn, then Salman, and then Sophia.
I'm going to be straight. I'm not sure if there's, a one-stop answer to this question. And I think that we've heard a lot of outrage from students about specifically how international students can access the health plan this year. And I'd say, from an advocacy perspective, there's a lot SMUSA can do in continuing to work for MSI coverage for students, international students that are coming to campus. But really, I think what we need to focus on with this issue is trying to capture some of that outrage and be able to turn it into a positive outcome. I think, historically, some of the processes at SMUSA can be a little bit separated from the students and their decisions that are being made, that hopefully students will respond well to. I think we need to get more students involved in that process to begin with. So when it comes to healthcare, particularly for international students, it's not my area of expertise, to be honest, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't be committed to getting the right people involved in that conversation to pursue a solution that most students on campus would be happy about. Thanks.
For this question, I believe that communication is the key. If students, ask for appointments via emails, I think, if they get response early, I think that is the key. And other than that, we have walk-in clinics as well. If students are not being able to access the SMUSA healthcare, I think the walk-in clinics are more productive. I mean, from my experience, I can tell you, whenever I'm not being able to access that, I either take the Husky Patrol or take the bus and go to the walk-in clinics. I think the solution is there, but definitely in terms of communication, we can do a lot about it. Thank you.
I
Salman said, I've had a few times where I was sick and I couldn't access the doctor, so I had to go to the walk-in clinic to be able to see a doctor. And the thing about it is that your insurance covers it. So once you go to the walk-in clinic and you get to see the doctor, you pay with your own money, but you can always go up to the SMUSA helpline office with your receipts and get a refund on that money spent to see the doctor. I know that the health plan/healthcare isn't the best, but they are trying, and we work on it to better improve it for students and make doctors and everything accessible to all. Thank you.
We have a lot of emails, so this is a good
Okay.
strategy. So, this is what current problems do you see with St. Mary's current sexual assault policy that you plan on working on as president?
Okay, so what are the problems you see in St. SMUSA's current sexual, is it SMUSA's or SMUS? SMU's current sexual violence policy, and what do you plan to do about it? And the order of this is Corinne, Sophia, Salman.
I think when it comes to sexual violence, that's really a key issue for a lot of people on campus, and it's something that we've seen, across the country and across the world is really being discussed as an issue that a lot of students care about. I think, one of the biggest problems with our current sexual violence policy is how it's written and updated. It's a process that doesn't involve a lot of students, and it's not something that's advertised as a process that a lot of people can be a part of. And beyond that, the people that write the sexual violence policy are also the people that enforce the sexual violence policy. So we're not getting a lot of new perspectives that are coming to be around the table. And so I think what's really important is, now that we have a standalone sexual violence policy here at St. Mary's, we need to ensure that students who are the ones that are experiencing, experiences with sexual violence on campus, they're the ones that are able to bring those forward and be able to share their opinions. Because right now it's being handled by a lot of people who don't have that on-the-ground experience. They don't have kind of a voice to the conversations that are currently going on between students. So we need to get people around the table that know how that policy is being perceived on campus to ensure that there can be improvements made.
So I went through the sexual prevention violence policy, and it was 5 pages. It was very vague. There was a contact of someone you could reach if you had an issue, but besides that, it's like the support isn't really there. It doesn't really give you enough details. It doesn't really give you enough to, want to actually report a case if you've been through an experience. And I feel like there's more that could be done. There could be an office dedicated to it. I know there is a sexual violence prevention laws, but I feel like there could be more, a place where students can happily relate their feelings or what they've gone through without having to deal with stigmas or without being judged for it. So yeah, getting more people's opinion on it. We can do it anonymously, or people want to come out and just writing a policy that actually favors the victim of what has happened. Thank you.
Well, as you all know, that I work with the Sexual Violence Prevention Initiative team, and we work, we provide, bystander intervention training to students, whether they are pack leaders, general students, door staffs, or whether they're in sports team. And because sexual violence it is very prevalent in our generation, and definitely we need to take some concrete action for that. Well, about policy, I learned from my board experience that, we need to make sure that the policies are always updated, revised, and we should actively educate our students about our sexual violence policy. Keeping it very sweet and short, thank you.
But I am going to say that if we have a lot, let's take 2 more this way, and then let's get the people in the room
That works for
lining
me.
up at that mic. So
Perfect.
we're going to do 2 questions, then we're putting the mic up there. We're going the mic is in right behind you. Thank you, Brady. And we'll put a mic on that, and you guys can answer from there, okay? Or ask from there, sorry. Go ahead.
Perfect. So it's why should we talk about having more food options, but we already pay $5,000 a year for their services on residents?
Okay, so the question is, why should we be talking about having more food options when we already pay $5,000 a year for food in residence? And the order is Salman, Sophia, Bryn.
Thank you for the question. We should talk about food options because there tends to be, the food, there's a lot of food like in Dockside, but the problem has always been students don't find it very tasty. Students have more expectations, and we want to add more food, like, in terms of like making sure that, the diversity, like multicultural diversity, there's a representation of that. Many students come from many different countries, many different backgrounds, and they have no option but to, go to Dockside and eat food there. But then again, not all of them are liking the food. That's why we should talk about food options. But honestly speaking, we can do very less with that because we do not have so much influence because Aramark contract is still going on. However, we can negotiate with the contract. We can make sure we have more events that represents and showcases multicultural diversity when it comes about food options. Thank you.
This is another place where diversity comes into place. SMUSA is known as one of the most diverse schools in Canada. And imagine having a school that doesn't actually meet to the diverse states of its students. That is why we are asking for more diverse food options, so that people will have something to eat. If you pay so much for it, $5,000 is a lot of money. If you change that to my country's currency, that's about 5 million. So I want a diverse food option, but I'm paying so much for it, and I want something that meets my tasting, and so do all the diverse students and students from here. They need it. That is why we are talking about diverse food options for students. Thank you.
I think the focus here has to be on making sure that $5,000 is going to food options that are good and food options that students actually want to be eating. And I was talking to a group of students today that were saying that they're in their first year living in Vanier, and when they go to Dockside, there aren't enough halal options for them to be not eating the same thing over and over and over again as the weeks go on. I remember in my first year, Dockside had a 2-week rotating food schedule. So if you were eating something on Monday, you were going to eat the exact same thing 2 weeks from then. And that's how it was for an entire year. So, with the fact that the Aramark contract is up this year, whoever, one of the three of us, whoever becomes SMUSA president, it's going to be our role to make sure that, either if Aramark's back or the new company is actually following through with the promises that they're going to make. And I think a big part of that is ensuring that students that are paying meal plans, that are going to Dockside and eating food, that they have the options that they need. One of those options might be increasing the number of flex dollars that students have so that they can be eating from other options on campus and not just from Dockside all the time. That's what we see at a number of other universities, even some down the road, in terms of allowing students to go to other places and be getting food, not just within one meal hall. So I think it comes down to focusing on where that $5,000 is going and making sure that students are getting the value of the money that they're putting in. Thanks.
Regarding the residence for international students over Christmas break. So international students are left with no access to food or accommodation on campus, and accommodation fees on campus are very hefty during this time. What do you plan on doing to fix this issue?
Okay, so the question is, over Christmas break, international students have difficulty. It's quite expensive, and they have a lack of services if they stay in residence. What do you do to plan to solve this problem? And the order question is Sophia, Bryn, Salman.
Hey, I talked to someone who told me about this, staying in residence during the break, it's very expensive. And then on top of that, you don't have a food option. So you have to spend more money, which is higher expenses for students. So the main way to go about this is advocating to SMU and Red Life, letting them know that even if they don't have the full, they don't have to bring in the full Aramark employees, but a good number of people who can provide meals to the students there, and making food accessible to them while they're here, because most of us can't can't go home. Like someone like me who has to pay about $2,000 for a flight ticket to go home for Christmas, it's very expensive. Being an international student is expensive, and giving us a chance to be able to have a more affordable meal plan and residence place to stay in, something we can advocate for, right from SMUSA to SMU and Res Life. Thank you.
I mean, in my opinion, the answer to this is it's unacceptable. It makes absolutely no sense that students are paying $5,000 to have a meal plan that then they can't access over Christmas. On top of that, they're paying $4,000 or $5,000 to have their room. And in some cases, for students living in Vanier, they don't even have access to drinking water within their pod. They need to go out and find... One thing that I want to say is that the reason that student associations and student unions exist in Canada are for these types of problems. When students were coming to university and they didn't have access to a health plan, that was an issue that student unions and student associations took on in order to make sure that students were receiving the best experience that they could have. So when I hear an issue like this that is literally unacceptable, that's the job of SMUSA, to make sure that we are gathering students together and fighting to make sure that students have a fair experience here on campus. Thank you.
Mentioned it. Yeah, it is unacceptable. And living on residence, I think, during the Christmas break, I remember my time, I had to pay for it, and it can be expensive for some of us. I think we should also have that option. Like it should be more like it should be completely free for us to live during the Christmas. If we're already paying for residence for 2 semesters, I don't think so. It makes any sense that we pay for additional amount during the Christmas break. When I get to be elected, I want to make sure that we actively advocate for this issue. I think leadership is not about just speaking, it's about taking some real action, and I believe in action. Thank you.
Okay, who's going to step up to the mic?
Okay, so if you talk to any LGBTQ student on this campus, they've probably had some experience with either a professor, staff, faculty, other students, whoever, of either harassment, discrimination, or just plain ignorance, health providers as well. And this especially applies to our transgender students. And every time we really talk to any authorities about it, whether it's with SMU or SMUSA, we're often just met with kind of rhetoric about diversity and inclusion and other buzzwords while people are actively, being heard. So I want to know what kind of concrete solutions you guys have to make LGBTQ students actually feel like someone at this school cares about them.
First is Sophia, then Salman, then Bryn.
So it's not just saying diversity, inclusion, and all that. We have to actually work on it. We have to educate people on understanding others, being accepting, being welcoming of people. Like when you come to us with your complaint, we are here to work on it. If you're harassed by a professor, a student, or anyone, we are here to talk to SMU and let them know that this professor is treating this student, or this staff, or this member is treating this student unfairly, and such behaviors cannot be accepted in school. Because as a human, you have a right, you have your feelings, and those things should be put into topmost priority. Nobody should be disrespected for who they are or how they try to represent themselves. Not actually. Thank you.
Last year, this time, when I ran for president, I actively advocated for LGBTQ issues, and I proposed the idea of having LGBTQ center. And now we have the Pride Center. I think our ideas are valid, and if we have some great ideas, it is always going to be pushed forward. Now, about complaints and harassments, I think the solution, because the question was about solution, what is the solution? The solution of that would be report. Well, we have the Pride Center representatives, so they will be working on this. They will be writing the reports. We will receive the reports, and we will take measures for that. We will definitely take some action. The right thing to do in this case is definitely action, but also there was a great point that was brought up, education, actively educating. That is the key. Thank you.
I feel like I'm going to be saying this a lot tonight, but this is something else that is unacceptable. And, Rudy, I thank you for the question because, I think it is something that we often handle these issues within SMUSA or try to provide support, but it's something that happens quietly. And I think, again, I want to return to the fact that, having an LGBTQ plus rep that works in SMUSA that is compensated for their work is really something that we need to do. I would give a lot of credit to someone like Sophie Slesser, the head of the Women's Center, who's paid to do that work and is paid to be actively promoting women's rights on campus. I think the exact same thing needs to happen for our 2S LGBTQ plus community as well, to ensure that they have the time and also the incentive to actually be working for students. And one thing I just want to say is, this is a part of my plan is to build a team of strong students that can execute on these issues. I'm not going to be the person who everyone's going to want to come to about every little thing, and I think that representation within SMUSA's structure is a really important part of this. It makes no sense to me why we haven't been compensating these positions in the past, and I think it really starts there. I want to credit the current VP Equity and Wellness and the current president for their work on creating a pride space on campus, but I also think we need to make that space bigger, a space where more students can be gathering, can be hosting and holding events, and really focusing on building that brave space and making it a little bit more accessible to students on campus. So thank you, Rudy, for bringing that question forward because it's a really important point. And again, it needs to be something that SMUSA continues to value and actively works towards in the coming year.
So I have a piece of information that I wanted to share before I ask the question. Is that okay?
Okay, as long as it's not 10 minutes.
Yeah, no. So as Sophie said that you guys can always go to the doctor outside of SMU for a walk-in clinic. If you guys get your receipts
Can you step up to the mic?
Okay.
Thank you.
If you guys get your receipts into the SMU Health Center for your walk-ins plus whatever prescribed medicines you take from shoppers or anywhere else, that also gets you a partial refund just in case you did not. Even the medicines, not just the walk-in receipts. That was what I wanted to share. My question was, I'll be honest, I am an international student and I come from India. International students have a diversity of 35% here. Not every country or not every place focuses a lot on mental health. My country specifically does not. Depression or be it mental wellness is not that big of a deal there. Here, I think those 35% of the population really do not know about mental health, be it they wouldn't even know the fact that they're depressed or not. Settling in another environment is very difficult for them too. My question is that what is it that you guys can offer that is not already being offered at SMUSA for the mental health, either awareness or well-being? Because I know Mary has done the wellness weeks this year. Mary has done, I think the wellness week first, but yeah, that's what my question is. So what is it that you guys can offer, which is already not there? Thanks.
Okay, so this goes Salman, Bryn, Sophia.
Thank you for the question, Vaishali.
Thank you.
Well, as I've mentioned about student wellness, like with social media, definitely we can do a lot. We will hire a social media coordinator who will definitely regulate these activities. Even as I've mentioned, like even with one negative comment, it can have so much bad impact on an individual. You would be surprised, and I've always seen that. And we should foster values like empathy, active listening, kindness, and for that we will have semi-annual wellness conference for 2 days where we will be educating about the resources. We will be talking about kindness and how to really value people. I think in our generation, we are often losing that. Sometimes we just say, oh, we don't have time. I think we can at least spare 30 seconds time for an individual. Mental health is very important, and I'm saying this again and again, that my platform focuses on mental health, and my slogan clearly says it, empathy and action. Thank you.
it's a really good question because mental health, consistently comes back as something that all of us care about the most on campus. And really what I want to pick on in your questions, what you talked about in terms of creating something new. And I think that, over the past few years, SMUSA, and it's not just SMUSA, there's other university departments, the counseling center residents have been doing a lot to try and promote awareness about mental health resources. I think what the next step is looking into, actually what are the, real things happening on campus that are leading to students feeling stressed out, maybe having some challenges with their mood, and trying to get at some of those, actual issues. And I would provide a few in thinking about how our academics are structured, because a lot of students feel really overwhelmed and stressed out during periods of midterms or final exams. Those are issues that we could bring forward to the university and talk about potentially restructuring some of those issues. Something we hear from students all the time is that they shouldn't have to write more than one exam on one day, and that there should be more time for them to be able to study in between. That's a policy, and there's something we can do about that, actively working with the university. The other thing, which was a project that SMUSA has been working on for a little while, and I think we could put some more energy into it, is making course outlines for courses available before you register for them. That way, if you know that final exams are really going to stress you out, if final exams are really going to stress you out, maybe you can selectively pick some courses that are maybe going to be a better fit for your learning style. So I think the awareness is definitely one piece, but it's kind of throwing that back at students and saying, what are the things that you want to see changed on campus, and figuring out how we can do that. Not seeing if we can do it, but actively working towards it and making a plan. Thank you.
I'm sorry. When you come third, I always screw it up, so I'm sorry. Global apology.
One of the things that I like to work on is getting a diverse group of counselors. People feel better when you're talking to someone who's similar to you in culture, understands your perspective, and knows what you are. So I'm looking for someone similar to me who understands me, so that when I come with my issues, they can be able to actually understand where I'm coming from, why my culture shock is this way, or why I'm dealing with certain issues is something I really want to push for. Because having a diverse counseling group makes it easier for students to come and talk about whatever issue they face. Thank you.
Before we go to you, do we have another one from the... I'm just going to try and pepper them in.
This is good. Okay, one second. Wasn't clear. This is, okay, this one's for, it's, St. Mary's is lacking in the fine arts program. Do you have any plans to work with societies such as the Drama Society or the Music Society to increase availability of fine arts activities for students at St. Mary's?
Okay, so the question is, St. Mary's doesn't have much of a fine arts program. Do you have any plans to work with either the theater or music society to increase fine arts options on campus? And this one goes Sophia Solman-Bryn.
That's a good question. I know there's a drama society, and I know about the arts gallery, and I feel like if we partner up with those organizations, those societies, and get them to express themselves and talk about what they would like to see, so that we can actively engage people, and there will be a way to improve on the program. Talking to me about maybe more art classes that students can relate to, like poetry classes. I know a lot of people who love poetry. That's under arts, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, things like that will be needed. More participation in creating awareness about the societies and what they do, I think, will be a way to also improve the fine art programs here at St. Mary's. Thank you.
For this question, I believe that collaboration is the key. If the societies work together, the Music Society, Drama Society, and SMUSA, if we provide them full support, I believe that they will be able to accomplish, and together we can definitely accomplish a lot. I think if there's just one event versus multiple events, it boils down to the student engagement. Many students will come to these events, and we'll be able to create more awarenesses in this case. And fostering values like creativity is very important. We can have photography workshops, we can have other workshops which will definitely help the students to learn more and be more creative, because once we are creative, we will be able to accomplish a lot more things. Thank you.
that this is a really great question because it captures what a lot of students feel, which is that maybe there aren't the opportunities that they're looking for. And I think one of the ways that we can work on this is by using the budget of SMUSA and trying to provide some of that money back into the hands of students. You know, every student in this room pays $150 to SMUSA, but don't necessarily get a lot of say in terms of how that money is being used. So something that I'd like to implement next year is a participatory budgeting system, which again is a bit of a technical term, but basically what that means is that student groups, you know, like the Drama Society, like the Music Society, or just a group of students that have an idea, could come together, share and present that idea in a town hall setting, and SMU students could actually vote on how that money is going to be used. So it would be creating a budget line within the SMUSA budget that would be directly given back to students. That could be something, you know, if there were folks working on an event for Black History Month that needed a little bit more funding, this is something that they could be able to present on and get the funding for that initiative. Again, you know, I want to come back to the fact that SMUSA really needs to focus on creating new things, new programs, and new initiatives. And the fine arts is a perfect example of one. It could be benefited if we were willing to take some of the money within our budget and give it back to students themselves. Thank you.
Okay, it's your turn now.
I think everyone's doing a great job. But this question, the first question is directed to Brain. You have great words, and it's always about actions. There was something you said that stuck out to me. You were like, you plan on making the Pride Center bigger. Shouldn't it be focused on making it better? I mean, you guys don't have a lot of space, so where's the space to make it bigger? And after that, so that question is directed to all three of you. One of the major problems I've seen while working with members, with the boards of directors and the presidents, that you guys are not reachable. How do you plan to make yourself more reachable to students when you're elected?
Okay, in the future, one question at a time. I'll let that go, but just so you know, no one else gets two questions. You did direct the question, so Brynette will come to you, but then I will also give your colleagues a chance to answer. So the first question is, how would you really want to make the Pride Center bigger, or do you want to make it better? And if it is make it bigger, where would you put it? Did I get that right? Okay, go ahead.
And thank you for picking up on that. It's a really good point, and I think the short answer is both. In that, you know, I think the Pride Center, in order to make it better, one of the things that we could do is expand the physical space to mean that more members that feel safe in the Pride Center would be able to actually attend events there, would be able to host events, and more people would be able to be there at the same time. Right now, the Pride Center is housed in an office on the 5th floor, and it's difficult for more than kind of 4 or 5 people to be in there comfortably. And you know, given the fact that our 2S LGBTQ+ community here on campus is a lot bigger than 5 people, I think it's important that we actually make a space that can better accommodate all of those on campus. In terms of where it would go, it's a good point, but I think that it's an important enough point that we need to raise it with the university and look into potential changes. There are some new buildings that are currently being planned from the university's perspective, and we can have a role in advocating for what that space is going to be used for, and talking about adding additional brave spaces, not just a Pride space, but looking into other brave spaces on campus. That needs to be a priority for us so that all of us on campus feel welcome and feel comfortable when we're going between classes, and you know, have a place where we can really feel like we can be ourselves.
So it's up to you guys whether or not you want to answer this question. You don't want to? Okay. So then the next question is, how are you going to remain accessible once elected? And because that is not directed, the order is Sophia, Solman, Bryn.
It's all by letting people know that about your office hours, creating time for them to see you, having pop-ups around school, and like just making yourself accessible so that students can always take their opinion, letting them know that they are free to message you at any time about any situation they're going through. There are about 6,000 students, and you won't be able to reach all of them at once, but having multiple platforms where they can reach you from your office, to having platforms to making them having them add you on like the SMUSA page on your social media is a way to make yourself accessible to students. And when you are accessible, you also have to make sure you're open-minded, because sometimes your view might not agree with people, but when you keep yourself open-minded and you listen to their needs, then you become more accessible, and it makes people willing to talk to you and listen to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this question, and I believe that, you know, replying within 2 business days. I think that would be something like to the board of directors, like, they would be able to reply you as soon as possible if this is an email, or if this is very important. Of course, social media is a great platform. We want to make sure that in every on-campus event we have representations, whether it's VP of Student Affairs, VP of Academic and Advocacy, or the President. If we always have representations, you can always reach out to us. I think I have always been a person who is very easy to reach out to, and I will always continue that when I get elected as president. And of course, if none of this work, a phone call will do. Thank you.
I think it's a really good point, and I would kind of like identify myself as a bit of a SMUSA nerd, in that like from my first year I was really interested in the work that SMUSA was doing. And that said, I never went to the 5th floor of the Student Center until I had an interview for my VP position. And I think what that means is that the SMUSA leadership team needs to be more involved in the work that's actually happening on campus, and meeting and talking to students where they are and at the events that they're at. It can be daunting for students to come up to the office and make an appointment with someone, and I think it's more important that the leadership team is actually on the ground interacting with students, hearing what those problems are firsthand. So I think continuing some initiatives like holding office hours for executives in the library, in Loyola Timms, like trying to get and provide students with more opportunities to raise their concerns without necessarily having to formally make an appointment or reach out to someone who they might have no connection to. I think it's really about attending events, making yourself visible, and also open to students where they are and where they feel comfortable.
Hi guys, good evening. So I have a question. What's your plan for ethnic societies? Because to be honest, some of these societies are left to fend for themselves. And frankly speaking, some of us have become non-existent. I'm speaking for the African Society, we don't even have African Night anymore. That was the one time that we get to enjoy ourselves and be ourselves. So what's your plan for that?
Okay, so the question is, what is your plan to address inequities in ethnic societies? Okay? The order for this is Salman, then Sophia, and then Bryn.
I think that is correct. I think we should not make any decisions based on the history, what has happened before, but rather focus on present. With African society, definitely we can create more events, and they should have the access to more funding from SMUSA. When I get elected, I will try to make sure that we are taking initiatives and doing as much as we can in terms of the events, and making sure that equity is like our focus for that. So of course, collaboration and working together, and this should definitely be our priority. This is the second time I'm hearing this question actually, and my response was the same, that based on history, I don't think so. Any decision should be based on that. I think it should be rather about current. Like for now, we have new representations every year, and they are working so hard. I think it's high time that we appreciate their work and we do something for them. Thank you.
I believe that societies are very important. Ethnic society helps promote diversity, inclusion, and help students in general. So yes, SMUSA will be there to help ethnic society, whatever issue they have. If you need help with funding, you can always apply. There's a way to get funding from SMUSA. In respect of whatever issue we'll find a way to come to an even ground instead of shutting down the society or something. Ways to help you, because every society promotes something different in SMUSA. They help us move, they help the school look good. So societies are important for us to move forward, and supporting you all is one of our major priorities. Thank you.
Just before I start, I'm interested, could I see a show of hands of people that are from a country in Africa in the audience? So again, it's unacceptable, it's ridiculous that we wouldn't have an African society where students can go and feel like they can share their culture and their experience here on campus. And I think what I want to pick up on from your question is the fact that, the way you talk about SMUSA, it makes it sound a bit restrictive, that they're looking for opportunities to maybe stop societies from succeeding. And I think that comes back to the opportunity that we have to grow the success of our societies. And I think it goes beyond just providing funding. If there are societies that need support with an event, that are looking for help with outreach, I think SMUSA should be the primary point of contact for them so that they can be working with the VP Student Affairs, who spends the entire year working to plan events, and be ensuring that they kind of have the opportunity to succeed on campus and that they're actively being supported. And so I think there's a lot that can be done in terms of tightening up the way that societies are handled. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that students feel like they can be a part of societies, clubs, and teams that they want to, so that they can really see themselves on campus and feel like they have a pathway to success.
Okay, so Mitch, go ahead. He's got some related questions that came in by email, so we're going to put them all at the same time and put them to you guys and then come back to you.
Hello. So there's been this is also an amazing idea. We're going to continue this in the years to come because I think not everyone feels comfortable with the microphone, so this is working very well. And we see your questions, we're writing them down, and we have kind of an order of precedence there. I've received a couple different questions regarding, I think from different groups regarding, I think how certain, I would say, unique stakeholder groups are treated on campus, whether it's the LGBTQ+ community, whether it's certainly the African, the Asian community. And I think it's clear that multiple of these communities, I had one email come in saying, well, we've, SMUSA for the last few years have favored this community, but we've had then people like Rudy come up and say, well, my community's not being heard. So I think the question that a lot of people are asking from different avenues is they feel like their specific stakeholder group is not being heard, and I think it's very clear that there's difference in priorities. So how, I guess, as president, would you manage multiple and sometimes conflicting stakeholder groups on campus?
Okay, thanks for putting all those into one. I didn't expect there's so many questions, which is great. And the order for this is, hang on, Sophia, Bryn, Salman.
That's a good question, because this is where equity comes in, being fair to everyone, making everyone know that there's no favoritism. All societies are treated equally, and everything they do is being appreciated. So when there's a conflict, the thing about having conflict is that it helps you move forward. It helps you see things in a different perspective. So when there's conflict between societies, or like conflict between SMUSA and societies, we just have to sit down and think of a way to move forward in a fair, equitable way, so that everyone knows that they feel among, there's no favoritism, there's no nothing. So technically it's just like listening to them and hearing what they have to say, and just finding a solution for that thing that they're talking about, or that problem that is there that needs fixing, so that everyone feels like they're treated fairly. Thank you.
I think that's a really interesting question, and it is something that we hear all the time, that SMUSA maybe is aligned with one group over another. And I think as president, something that I would be really interested in doing, we've heard all night the importance of listening to people and being willing to receive feedback, but I think a lot of that has to be in terms of how we provide opportunities for people to share their opinion. And one of the things that's a little bit funny about the election period is that this tends to be one of the times where a lot of issues are brought forward and people finally have an opportunity to share the thing that they've been thinking all year. And I think really what we need to do, or what I would do as president, is implement a feedback structure and be actively seeking that kind of feedback from students, because the first problem we have with that kind of question is that oftentimes we're not hearing about those problems when they're coming in. And so I think we need to ensure that we are aware of what the problems are before we can start to try and create some solutions. And that said, I would be stupid to kind of be here in front of you saying that, I think issues regarding racism and discrimination are things that could be solved by any one of us overnight. But I think it's ensuring that we're a little bit more aware of the landscape here at St. Mary's, and that we actually know what some of the problems are that we can go out and try to fix. And so I think by creating a feedback structure, by having town halls, creating this kind of opportunity for feedback to be given to the leadership team and to SMUSA as a whole would be really important, and something that I would be very keen to implement as president. Thank you.
Okay, back to the mic. I did see you. Okay, there you go, Salman. I'm sorry.
opportunity and active listening, practicing empathy, these are the keys. I believe that if there is a potential conflict, we should try to resolve it. We should try to negotiate it. We should try to understand what the other person is, where they're coming from, and try to understand the issue really, and focus on the issue and try to solve it to the best of our capability, rather than just ignoring it or shutting down the opportunity. As Bryn mentioned, the feedback, as you all know that, with my Student Voice project, I'm reaching out to students and asking them to fill out the feedback papers. I believe that if we continue doing that work with student ambassadors, I think the feedback will be much more effective. So this will be the system, and this will be the way we can definitely create that system and make sure that all the voices are being heard and we're trying to take action. Because leadership is not about talking. I have language barrier issues. I came here as a part-time student. I can speak 5 different languages. English is not my strength. But I can tell you, we grow, we learn, and leadership is about taking that action, having that drive that every day we are ready to work for this Students Association. Thank you.
Hello, you guys are doing a great job, by the way. It must be really tough being up there. But so you guys have really great platforms, and I'm glad that both of you seem to be advocating for different things, not similar. So I think like a common theme that's been on campus is a little bit of skepticism. We are skeptical, basically, because these are like the issues that you're bringing up. We've kind of heard them. I don't know. I've heard them. Free textbooks, lower tuition, etc. So like I'll just give you the option to kind of pick what you want to talk about. But what actual steps are you going to take to make sure that something actually happens? Because in previous years, and even with the board that you have now, they're tackling these issues, but why haven't these issues kind of been solved or whatever? So just it's up to you. So for example, with Aramac and diversity, like, are you going to look at maybe the staff that they're hiring to cook the food? Is it diverse, or is it all just Canadian staff? So I'm asking for a little bit more detail in just one specific thing, and how you're actively going to try and change that, because we've heard it before.
And in that moment, I'll rephrase the question, which is for each of you to choose one thing in which you're going to make change, and detail how you're going to bring that change into reality by the end of the next school year. I think that's a good paraphrase of your question.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. And the order of this question will be Salman, Sophia, Bryn.
I think the answer to that will be taking action every day. Every day, we will try to make sure that we are representing you, and we would want to hear from you. If you think that we are not representing you, I don't think so. We should be executives anymore. I think that the key is to you reaching out to us, tell us that someone, now you have become the president, but you know what? You are not sticking to your promises. You need to do this. You need to do that. But I will make sure that I try with my full effort to make things happen, at least about the platforms we're talking about, and all the feedbacks we're receiving from the students, because this is important. And of course, it is right, leadership is tough. We cannot resolve every issue, but we can do to the best of our ability. I think if we have that drive, if we continue our work, and if we make sure that we are doing the right thing, we're taking the right actions, I think this is definitely possible. And if it doesn't happen, I think we should have evaluation, per semester, how we are doing, and you can let us know. And of course, we will have office hours. You can let us know that we are not doing the right thing, or we are not making sure that we are sticking to our promises or platforms. I can promise you, the platforms which I'm suggesting, they're feasible, and it's possible to make this happen, to make these changes. Mentorship program, professional development opportunities. I think it is definitely possible and feasible, and that's why I have been focusing on my platforms. Once again, if you think we are not representing you, reach out to us, and we will definitely take action. Thank you.
promises that never get fulfilled, and I understand it can also be frustrating. So on my part, I think we can start with, this is the goal we want to achieve. We set a deadline, a time of when we want to have it achieved by. We try to get to the aim, the outcome, and we get feedbacks from the students. Because sometimes, we promise things and we don't get them done. Basically, maybe because of the restriction or the policies, and we're trying to work our way around it. Our job is to offer you the best we can here on campus, and sometimes we don't achieve that. But I believe that if we set the goal, we make an aim of when we want to achieve it, and we let students know, and this is the feedback we want. It pushes us towards actually giving you what you want, especially when you give us the feedback to that thing. So setting the goal, aiming for it, and creating the feedback is the way to potentially achieve what the students need for them. Thank you.
I think the first thing that I would say is that, sometimes when you have a mandate for 1 year, it's hard when you get a few months in and you think, I promised this, I'm not going to be able to get it done, I'm going to focus my time on other things. What I've tried to do with my platform, and I'll promise to you now, everything that's in my platform is something that I will 100% start in my first year. I'm not going to promise that I'm going to be able to finish everything, because it's a pretty large platform. There's always some roadblocks that come up, but it's a lot easier for the following executive team in the years in the future to finish projects that are already started, rather than having to start things completely brand new. And to come back to your question, which was, to provide actually a plan, I'll let you know that I have talked a little bit about what my vision is for next year in terms of ideas, but tomorrow I plan on launching my full in-depth, step-by-step plan of how I think I can achieve all of these issues alongside, a strong team of students next year. If I look at free textbooks, which is something that a lot of people have been asking, how the hell are you going to do that? That's something, there's some work that's already been put in place. We've already been advocating to the government this year as a part of Students Nova Scotia. We've been working alongside colleagues at St. Francis Xavier and Acadia. The next steps here are to find some faculty champions here at St. Mary's that would want to be involved in creating these open educational resources, work with students to make sure that we can host awareness weeks about open educational resources, start to gather student support, and then go back to the government and demand that this is something that we want. There's actually a pilot program starting for open educational resources, so some of us will see free textbooks in our class next year. It's about taking that, showing that we care about it, and making it happen the year after. Thank you.
So the people that are in line now are it. We're coming up to 5 to 8. We have a couple more questions here. So if you're not in line now, don't get in line because your question's not going to get answered. Okay? You can email it in and hope Mitch puts it to the top of the list. All right. Pardon?
Better be good.
Yeah, better be good if he's going to filter it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so my question comes from a similar kind of background of skepticism as Vim's. But to be honest, I'm sure everybody here kind of felt as though, it's like a breath of fresh air. Like, we all have concerns, we all have queries, and y'all are here to, make us feel better, tell us, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I'm sure for the most part we understand how life works, and we understand that there are many things that y'all have said that you can address or that will be addressed that realistically speaking you probably won't be able to, since you're going to have priorities. In addition, I feel as though Vim's question wasn't...
Can we answer the question?
Oh, okay, sure. But what are the key things that you all actually want to do, or that you actually think that you will do? Like, what do you think you will do in your year-long tenure as president, provided that you are elected?
Okay, so I'm going to simplify his question because I don't want each of you to take a minute and a half. Give me your top 3 goals. So, your goal might be improve mental health, better food at Dockside, free textbooks. That's the kind of answer I'm looking for. Definitive, not a lot of political speak, 3 things each. And the order is, hang on, it's reversed. It's Salman, Sophia, and Bryn.
Number 1, addressing climate change. Number 2, expanding professional development opportunities. And number 3, adopting mentorship program. Thank you.
So mine is communication, resident service, and diversifying the food options. Thank you.
Diverse representation on SMUSA, free textbooks, and participatory budgeting.
Excellent.
at the end. So, but yeah, speaking of on behalf of art students, from all the 3 years I've been at SMU, I realized that whenever you go to a job fair, there's virtually almost one kind of job that relates to art students, right? And every time I go, it's kind of it just leaves you wondering, am I in the wrong school? Am I doing the wrong degree? Am I actually going to have a job? Because last time I checked, the entire point of a summer job, right, well, at least, should be to do a job that's kind of in direction to what you want to do at the end, right? And if you don't get a job that's not in that direction, you're kind of low-key screwed, right? Because at the end, they ask you for your experience. So do you guys have a plan for art students in terms of diversifying the job fair? Because right now, it is kind of down the pits. Thank you.
Okay, so this goes Bryn, Salman, Sophia, and the question is, what's your plan, or do you have one, to diversify job options for art students at the job fair?
It's a great question, and I echo your stress. I'm an art student myself, and I have the same concerns about my degree and where I'm going to be at the end. And I think what you talked about in terms of gaining experience, and part of it is summer jobs, I think it all comes back to experiential learning. And we're in a really fortunate position that Student Affairs and Services here at the university now has a dedicated department to focus on experiential learning. And it's really an opportunity for us to hear concerns like that. We need more opportunities as art students to go out and get experience in the field that aren't necessarily, co-op jobs or something that maybe don't fit with what we want to do. And so I think we have a really interesting opportunity right now to reach out to students, hear about the type of experience that they want, and then turn to the faculty in the hopes that we can create classroom settings and also start to develop connections with employers in the field. Because at the end of the day, you're exactly right. What we're learning in the classroom is really important in terms of our development as people. But a lot of us get jobs at the end of this by the connections that we've made along the way. So I'm interested in looking at experiential learning, making sure that experiential learning isn't just something for commerce students, and that it's available to art students and science students as well. Thank you.
I think this gives me an opportunity to talk more about my platform. Well, with mentorship program, we want to make sure that the first year and the second year students receive full support from third and fourth year students, because they have already taken the courses, so they will understand what to do next and how to move into their career fields. With professional development opportunities, I believe that experiences really matter. With right experiences, you can secure the right job. If we have more professional development opportunities, if we create more awarenesses about these programs to our first and second year students from the beginning, from the time they come to St. Mary's, they will understand and they will learn that these are the things we should focus on for job experiences, and that would help them eventually to get the next job. Thank you.
So being a commerce student myself, when I go for the the job fair, and I see lots of organizations that work towards my goal and everything, I wouldn't notice that other departments are lacking, which is something that's a serious issue that needs to be faced when it comes to providing more people that relate to student department and jobs. So I feel like a way we can work towards it is developing connections with people in the arts field that can create jobs for the student. You guys know about SMUworks, creating more SMUworks jobs related towards the arts programs, the science programs, and advocating to SMU to create those jobs for the student, and getting students feedback on what they want and what kind of job they'll be looking for that relates towards their needs. Thank you.
Historically, science students are not very involved in SMUSA for several reasons, such as more intense class schedules as we have labs. I'm just wondering if any of your platforms involve ways to get science students involved, whether it be a small position to even just hear their voice, or more ways to facilitate, for example, executive positions that facilitate the more intense schedules. Thank you.
Okay, viewer for this goes Bryn, Sophia, Salman.
Thank you for the question, and I think this ties back into making SMUSA more inclusive. You're exactly right. We don't see a lot of science students that are a part of SMUSA executive teams, and we don't see a lot of science students actually involved in contributing ideas and providing their voice to SMUSA. And I think, again, what this comes back to, first is one of my platform points about diverse representation. I think we should have representatives from each faculty coming and sharing their perspectives on things that are going wrong in the arts faculty, in business, or in science, to be able to share a different perspective. And the second thing you mentioned was kind of looking at the workload. Like, just on paper, science students are in classes and labs more than commerce and art students for the most part because of that required lab component. So I think what's important there is we need to focus less on fitting science students into the SMUSA mold, but more about how can we alter some of these positions, how can we make them more accessible to science students who might be working different hours, who might be able to contribute a different amount. But I think what it starts with is ensuring that we have that voice at the table and making SMUSA work for you as opposed to us making you work for us. Thanks.
Like Brent said, a way to get people engaged and involved is by having representation for each department, science, business, arts, and listening to their needs, trying to know their ideas or ways we can help make things accessible to them or better for them. And also, I know SMUSA makes it easy for you to open a society. So if you have any society you want to start based on the science department, once you have like 15 members, I believe, you can be able to open that. And we'll be there to support you, we'll be there to help you grow your society, and we'll be very willing to listen to you and whatever you need to face as a science student. Thank you.
I believe that in a collaborative manner, biology society, chemistry society, if they all work together, I think it would be much more productive. And yes, it is correct that science students, they don't have that much time. I was a science student. When I first came, I started with my biology degree. For 2 years, I've been taking labs, chemistry labs, physics lab, biology lab, and I realized that, at the end of the day, you're so drained out and you don't get the time, you don't get the opportunity to do something. I think it's definitely figuring out that time, like what we can do different to take service from the science students. What are their time slots? When are they free to come out to these events, and what they want to do different in terms of professional development opportunities, and having presentations, maybe like 5 minutes presentations, just before their lab timings or before their class. I think that would be something we can focus on, and we can make sure that their voice is also being heard. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all and congratulate you guys are doing really great. So my question is, if any one of you gets elected, so do you think you as SMUSA, as the face of SMUSA, can advocate SMU to have more scholarship programs for students who are doing more extracurricular activities instead of having and maintaining that 4 GPA which not everyone can maintain, but they are giving everything and they are giving so much to SMU. So do you think you guys can advocate SMU to have more scholarship programs where students can actually compete and win that scholarship? So, do you think that can
So the order is Sophia, Bryn, and Salman, and the question is, are you willing to propose some ideas whereby the scholarship programs are amended so that they're not purely academic based?
Yes, that's something I would definitely like to work on, because ever since my first year, I have been involved in school, and I had to work 3 jobs and take 4 classes. So you guys can imagine how my academic standing is, while also volunteering and doing all that. A lot goes into volunteering, giving your time to the school, trying to create events for people, what you do to make student life better. And those things should be recognized. The school should be able to offer scholarships to students who actually put a lot of effort to better themselves and make things easier for students. So yes, I definitely would love to advocate for students who are doing other things besides having a 4-point-something GPA, because a lot goes into it and we do need representation here. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And the easy answer answer is 100% we can advocate for this to the university. Whether we have the power to make that change ourselves, we don't. It is something that comes down to the university in the way that they and their donors would like to apply scholarships. But something I want to come back to is you just had an opportunity to share an idea that you had, which was scholarships, that aren't solely based on academics, that are more based around extracurriculars. And almost everyone in the audience was clapping along, agreeing with that idea. When I talk about a participatory budgeting system, what I want to do is allow people like you to provide those ideas, to put them forward, and then give people like everyone in the audience an opportunity to agree that that's something that they would want. Under that system, we could happily put some money in towards scholarships for students and be quite literally giving bursaries and money back to students towards their degree. So really what I find most powerful about your question is the fact that it shouldn't be up to only the executive team at SMUSA or whoever makes the decisions about scholarships at the university about where money's going. A lot of that decision should be back in the hands of students, back in the hands of you. Thank you.
The last year I received a question during my campaign that someone, what have you done other than your board experience, volunteering, dancing for the events, and going to the events? I want to reflect on that. When we go to the events, we interact with the students, we learn about student issues. When we dance, we promote culture. We try to make sure that we are rehearsing well so that we want to put up a great show. When we volunteer, it takes a large heart to volunteer. I appreciate all the volunteers, and board experience is definitely honorarium. So I can tell you that all these experiences, they deserve something. Like all the students who are being involved on campus, who volunteered or promoting their culture, doing something. I think they all deserve the scholarship. I believe that there should be scholarship for leadership opportunities. There should be scholarship for the sports team, and there should also be scholarship for those students who are, representing their culture and, doing their best for their community and getting their voice heard. Thank you.
Okay, so you have the last question?
And the last question.
And I'll let Mitch take one more after this for one or two from the email. Then these guys are going to get their minute to close up, and then we're going to draw for the fabulous prizes. So you got about 10, 12 minutes left. Go ahead.
Great. So all of you have amazing ideas and amazing new progress that you want to do here during your year. But issues are currently coming throughout the year. And issues that you promised here, as someone else said, are probably not going to be one of your main priorities. So how are you going to have the students here, the student body at SMU, 7,000 students, hold you accountable for all the things that you're promising throughout the year and trust you, basically? How are we going to do that?
Okay, so the order for this would be Bryn, Solman, Sophia. And the question is, how are you going to juggle the promises that you have with the issues that surface throughout the year in such a way that students still trust you?
Thank you for the question. And I think you raise a really good point that there are going to be lots of times throughout the year, no matter which one of us is elected, where students like yourselves are going to be bringing issues forward that they want solutions or they want advice. And that's 100% the first job of any president, is to make sure that they're supporting students, they're listening to students, and working towards making student experiences better. That said, I think when it comes to a lot of the things that I've put forward in my vision for next year, I want to involve students like yourselves in this room, and I want to build a strong team that can help to execute all of those tasks and really try and create progress in those areas. So I think when it comes to asking for the students that are here, the students that are watching on the live stream, to trust me and my ability to get tasks done next year, I would kind of throw that back at you and say that you also need to be able to trust yourselves. That together we can really work together and put a lot of work into creating solutions and tackling some of the things that I've put forward in my platform. Thank you.
Well, this question for me, I think it's very emotional because I have been trying to find the right opportunities. I tried my best to be part of SMUSA whenever I could, and I still want to be part of SMUSA. The last year I ran I ran because I'm really passionate about this. Some of us, we're interested. We just don't get the opportunity, and we are seeking for opportunity. I'm still here telling you about what I have to offer. I'm still here to tell you what we can do together. But with the right opportunity, I believe that, once I get to serve you as your president, I will definitely make sure all the promises I'm making and all the student issues are being addressed. And because we didn't get the opportunities, when we will get the opportunity, I think we have that drive. We just need that opportunity, and we will make sure it happens. Thank you.
Getting students to trust you, that can be quite difficult because trust isn't something that's easily gotten. It takes a while to gain the students' trust. It takes a while to gain their respect. It takes a while to actually be able to let the students see that you're putting them as your topmost priority. But in order to have their trust, we have to learn how to prioritize properly. Issues are going to be occurring, so we have to pick the ones that are the topmost issues and then handle those ones while also focusing on the long-term and short-term goals in order to meet up with student needs. You can't gain students' trust in one day, but if you keep on working hard every day and ensuring the students that you're putting their best interest in mind, then of course students will start to believe in you. Thank you.
So Mitch, do you have any other questions?
I just combined a bunch of them because I can't possibly intro.
Do you want me to read it?
So I'm going to do two because I kind of want to comment too. All right. So I tried to make all the questions similar. So I'll say two things. Maybe I shouldn't speak too soon. The first thing, and I've got a couple, I've been communicating with a few other people in the audience and some people watching at home who have who've been around as I have for the last 4 years. And I just want to say how impressed I am both with the candidates and the students. This is absolutely the most respectful, the most collegial debate I have seen in my time here at St. Mary's, and I'm super, super impressed. But we're not done yet, so we're not going to There's been a lot of questions, and I don't want anyone to feel like their questions been missed. There's been a lot of health questions that have been some unanswered but not answered, and there's also been an extreme amount of residence questions. So I do want to divert for a sec. I do want to recognize, not to put you on the spot, Katie, but Katie Cofoyle is the director of Residence Life. She has come to every single event in my 4 years here in terms of debates. She sits in the back, she takes notes, and she listens to students' concerns every single year. And she's the only member of any administration in this university who's done that for the last 4 years. I'm going to just type up all of the residence-related questions that we have today, and I'm going to send them to her. And any of the unanswered questions, I'm also going to forward to the 3 candidates if they wish to receive them, and they can kind of address that, with students broadly, whether they're elected or not, if that's okay. Because there's been a lot of questions, and we're really happy, but we do have to, of course, leave some of them unanswered for now. So I'll give them the opportunity to kind of take what they will from these later. But the last question we'll ask, which is kind of a culmination of questions, relates to the leadership team that the president will eventually hire. So for those of you who are new, we don't elect our leadership team under the president. The president actually is involved in hiring them. So I've tried to kind of combine them, and that you've all been part of SMUSA before, whether as an executive or a board member or a volunteer. How do you plan to represent diversity, not just academic diversity, but social, academic, other types of diversity in your leadership team, and ensure that this team is well supported as you tackle challenges that you and your previous teams have tackled before? So, sorry. So, we try, guys. There's a lot. Yeah, so I'll leave this with you.
So, as you, if you become the president and you're hiring your executive team, how do you intend to ensure that all aspects of diversity, including race, gender, orientation, background, educational area of study, are reflected in your team, and how do you intend to ensure that the process for selecting that team is fair and transparent? Is that a fair? That's good. You guys have that? Okay, so for this question, it is Salman, Bryn, Sophia.
That's a tough one. Well, I think, of course, it should be based on qualification. Whichever candidate is the most qualified, and the decision will not just based on me. It's going to be, we have a recruitment team. I think whoever, like the overall recruitment team is ready to go forward with, we will just try to do that. It should not be about just like my decision for sure. And secondly, I would like to say that we need to make sure that we have diversity when we talk about the executives. Definitely that's something I will be focusing on once I get elected. I will just keep it very short, and that's because it should be based on qualification, but also we need to have at least one or two diverse members. Thank you.
I think that is, one of the most important things that SMUSA is going to have to deal with and talk about, over the course of the next few months. And I think, to Salman's point, I think, when it comes to the actual hiring process, I don't think it should all 100% come down to the president. I think it's important to have, a group of students, a group of SMUSA employees that can be contributing to that decision, in terms of having a hiring panel. If elected, I think the first thing that I would look into is, how we could maybe change some of our hiring practices to ensure that students feel safe, that they feel accepted and respected going through that process. I also think it comes down to the way that SMUSA continues to advertise itself and talk about the positions. There are some students who are naturally going to see themselves as a good fit within SMUSA, and there's others that are going to feel like that's not really an organization for them. So I think it's important, in hiring an executive team, I would always think about the fact that, students are going to feel comfortable. In the same way that we talked about counselors, students are going to feel comfortable with an executive team that looks like their campus. And we have a very strong campus, and I think it's important that we ensure that students can look at the executive and feel like they have someone there who they can go and talk to and feel safe bringing ideas forward. So I think it comes back to, quite literally looking at our hiring practices, ensuring that that's fair, that that's equitable, and that it's not, only the decision of one person. And also active outreach to make more of our students on campus feel like they can be involved in SMUSA and that that's a place that they want to be. Thank you.
I agree with what Brent said, but besides looking at the hiring process, it's also up to you guys. In order for it to be diverse, we need a diverse group of people applying. We need people who are ready to take up this position. We encourage everyone here, if you're watching wherever you are, just apply. That gives us more options. That gives us the ability to diversify our group and make sure at least students' view and point are being listened to. The more people that apply for these positions, the more we are able to diversify it. So I encourage every one of you, besides our hiring process, which I believe is fair, because it's not just the president that makes the decision. There's the board and there's someone else there with them to make the decision. We need the students to also participate. Thank you.
So we're at the part now where I sit down. Each of you has 2 minutes to sum up, and they go in the following order: Sophia, Salman, and then Bryn. You have 2 minutes, and I don't start my timer until you stand up, so be comfortable. You can stand up, you can come up here, you can take the mic, do whatever you want.
Hi everyone. I want to thank every one of you who are here participating and those of you watching live, because besides answering the question, you've also broadened our ideas. You've brought things that we need to work on here for us, because your opinion matters, and being here voicing your opinion doesn't just end today. It continues forever. Like, as long as you're a student here, continue to voice your opinion, continue to let us know what you want, and anyone that's elected will always be here to work for you. We're here to listen to you, and we're here to represent you. So I want to thank you for this opportunity to sit down here. I want to thank everyone who's here, everyone who's watching live, and I respect you all for doing this. So once again, vote Sophia for president, and I will try my best to represent you all.
had to speak, of course. And I promise, next year I'm not running. I wanted to tell you that this is my fourth SMUSA election. The first time I ran for Bangladeshi Society as a presidential candidate. Next year I ran for board. The last year I ran for president. And this year too, I'm running for president. And I believe that, I have that drive and I am interested. And I tried my best. Like the first day when we had to put up the poster, my poster was up. The campaign days, I'm trying to reach out to more students with my campaign. And if you think that this is just about speech, it is probably for you, in your opinion, but I think it's about poster, it's about campaign, it's also about speech. But I'm sure you all will make an informed decision. I believe in empathy, and I think we should practice empathy rather than just saying the word empathy. And if something I would like you all to remember about me is that Salman was a guy who was continually reaching out to people and trying to make a difference in the community. Thank you, everyone.
So to echo Salman and Sophia, I really want to thank all of you for coming out. And I know Josh is in the audience, and he said the other night that this is a really important part of the democratic process, and it's great that all of you have taken the opportunity to come out, to listen to us, and really participate in what I think has been an excellent discussion about some of the realities at St. Mary's, some of the realities of SMUSA, but also talking about where some of the potential lies and some of the things that we can really start to focus on moving forward towards the next year. I'm not sure if anyone was at the environmental racism panel last night, but I stopped in and it was actually one of the best events that I've ever been to here at St. Mary's. And there was a professor there from Dalhousie talking about allyship. And what she spoke about was the fact that in order to be a strong ally, you kind of have to treat it a little bit like a dance. You don't have to lead, but you have to know when you can step in and support and be right there with the person that you're supporting. And I want to say that I think that really speaks to how I would act as president and the importance of my campaign. This campaign isn't all about me. I don't want to be, the face of SMUSA, the only person that has the power to do anything. I really want to work with students like yourselves to really make a change on campus and actually take some of the things that we've talked about tonight and turn them into something real and something tangible. Tomorrow I'm going to be launching my entire platform that gives you a full plan and a full idea of how I would execute some of these ideas going forward. But the one piece that still needs to be figured out is the team of students that would be there alongside me if I'm elected next year. I would similarly encourage all of you to run and continue some of these conversations that we've had tonight with some of your friends and peers. It's really important if you think, that there's one candidate that's stronger than another, even if it's not me, that, you tell your friends, you have that conversation, and you get more people out to vote in the SMUSA election. Regardless of whether you like SMUSA or not, we're all paying student fees, and it's really important that we take an interest in the direction of that student association. So take some time over the next few days, really think about some of the ideas that have been brought forward. Come talk to us. We'll all be over campus for the next few days, raise some more questions, and vote next week. Thank you very much.
This time I'm gonna choose one random person via email and one of the names up over here. So the 20th person who sends us an email with the subject contest will win one of the gift cards, and the second person so we have 1 minute. The 20th person who sends us an email for the subject contest will win. And you guys have 20th. So you have 1 minute, starting from now.
The one on the screen.
And Osama, you have to be a student to win these.
Specify the email.
It's contact. And there's no body to write it.
Okay, we definitely have more than 20. Okay, stop emailing. Guys, every time you email, it resets to the top again. It's probably the Wi-Fi. It doesn't. Let's draw the other one while it stops. Yeah.
We can come down. Emma Carey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amir. Before everyone rushes out, as is custom, if we said this last time, if you are interested in being a poll clerk, we're still looking for a couple more people on both the Wednesday and Thursday. That's going to be voting days. So if you want to assist us, it is a paid opportunity. So send an email just with the subject line poll clerk with like a resume, and we'll kind of reach out to you. But please do remember that by Monday, ideally, or before. Yeah, there's that, and then voting is going to be online. We'll be putting the website out both. It'll be on the SMUSA Facebook page, it'll be on the journal page, and our page with the voting link. That's going to be Wednesday and Thursday. I do see a hand. I will answer.
For the poll clerks, is there a spreadsheet or anything like that that has time frames for when?
Yes. So if you're interested, contact us, and we'll give you some times that are available. And then the last thing I'll mention is next Thursday evening at, I believe it's 7 p.m. Is the election results party. So that's when we can forget all our troubles and go see the election results announced live. And that's going to be at the Borisbrook at 7 p.m. next Thursday night. So thanks so much for coming, everyone.